Computer-delivered IELTS, brought to you by Knowledge Island by Bilal.
This is the IELTS Listening Test. You will hear 4 different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. You will hear each recording once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 2 minutes to check all of your answers.
Part 1. You will hear a woman phoning to inquire about some second-hand furniture. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Three 48831.
Oh, hello. I'm calling about your advertisement in the local paper.
Oh, well, there were 2 ads, actually. Was it the one for second-hand furniture?
That's right, yes. Last Thursday?
Oh, yes. Some of it's already gone, I'm afraid, but what exactly were you interested in?
Mainly the dining room furniture, especially the table. Has that gone yet?
Not yet.
Oh, good. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Well, it's round. I'm not sure of the exact measurements, but it's medium-sized. It seats about 6.
And how old is it?
Let's see. 10 years. No, it must be 12 by now.
And the advertisement said you were asking £25 for that?
That's right.
And do you still have the dining chairs?
Yes, it's a set of 4 chairs. There were 2 more, but over the years a couple have disappeared.
What are they like?
Quite nice. They've got upholstered seats. You know, they're covered in material to make them more comfortable to sit on. That's green, but you could change it, of course, if you wanted something different.
What sort of condition are they in?
I'd say reasonable. They've had a bit of wear, and we're asking £20 for those.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to ask about was the desk. Can you tell me roughly how long the top is, so I know if it'll fit in my room?
Let's see, it's 75 centimetres high, I know, and the length's 1 metre 20, and it's 40 centimetres deep. It's got 3 drawers. The top one's got a lock, so you can keep your valuables there.
And you were asking £50 for that?
Yes, it's a bit more because it's in good condition.
Okay.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Where do you live?
I'm in Stonethorpe.
Oh, yes, I know where that is. So, can you give me the address?
It's 326 Old Lane.
Okay. Stonethorpe. And what would you say was the best way for me to get to the house?
Well, from the centre of Stonethorpe, you take the main road going towards Horcroft.
Okay.
And you pass the secondary school on your left. Then at the crossroads, you turn right.
Okay.
Go straight down the road and you'll see a bank. And my house is just opposite. If you get to the traffic lights, you've gone too far and you'll have to turn back.
Good. Got that.
I can keep the things till Friday if you like, and then after that I'll let them go to someone else.
Oh, thanks. I should be able to get round by then. In fact, I've got Thursday off work. And what would be the most convenient time for me to come?
We're usually out during the day till 4 or 5.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a talk given to new staff at a children's summer camp. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all our staff on this summer's Kids Camp. In our orientation programme this morning, I will introduce you to all the people you need to know at the camp. They each have a different responsibility in the centre, so it's a good idea to make a note of who does what. Well, first of all, you all know me, Jill Andrews. I'm the coordinator here. The next person you need to know is Mary Brown. She's our accommodation officer, so she deals with all the housekeeping matters concerning both the children's dormitories and your own accommodation wing. Next, we have John Stevens, who is our catering manager, and he organises all the menus. If you have any special dietary requirements, speak to John and he'll do his best to accommodate you. We sometimes find that the children complain about not liking certain meals, so if there's a real problem, you should get John involved. Then we have Alison Jones. She plans all the excursions and does all the bookings for the tour buses, etc. Alison also accompanies the children on the excursions and is responsible for making sure that the same number of children return to the centre as leave it. Tim Smith is in charge of physical education. He'll organise the big athletics carnival that we have at the end of the camp. But he'll also plan the individual training sessions for the kids. We have to remember that exercise is one of the key features of this camp. Last but not least is our wonderful Jenny James. She looks after any of the children who are homesick or have problems getting on with other kids here. So don't feel you have to deal with those problems yourself. A chat with Jenny usually does the trick. You'll notice that this year we don't have a resident first aid person. Instead, we have a qualified nurse on call at all times should anyone fall ill.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, in a moment, I would like to take you on a tour of the centre and show you all the rooms and facilities which are available. But first, I've passed round some maps for you to look at while I explain everything. So if you can start by locating the main hall, which is where we are at the moment, then we can all orientate ourselves. OK? So as you can see, the reception area is behind you. I'll come back to that section later. Now, if you go out through these doors into the garden, you'll see a large building ahead of you which holds our sporting facilities. There's a fully equipped gym, swimming pool and basketball court. All of these are available to both staff and students, though most of the time they will be used by students under supervision. OK, so if we follow the path on the left of the garden area, this block is where the student accommodation is. The first room is the student games room, and after that you'll see the boys' accommodation, and at the end the girls' accommodation. You'll be pleased to see the children's accommodation is in a separate building from the staff accommodation wing, which is just around the corner from the girls' rooms. And you'll see you have your own recreational area on the right side of the building. Now, following the path back down the other side of the garden area, you'll see the art and craft block. The first room is where the children do pottery. It's between the staff lounge and the art room. We've tried to keep all these craft areas together. We tend to find that the children really enjoy having the opportunity to use their creative talents on a holiday course such as this, which is why we have 4 different rooms. Next comes the art room, followed by the general craft room, which contains a variety of equipment. And the last one is the cookery room for all our budding chefs. And then we're back to the main hall once again. So, I hope you all have a pretty good idea of what's what. Now I'll leave you to have a look around and we'll meet again for lunch.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 45 seconds to check your answers to Part 2.
Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get more updates.
Part 3. You will hear 2 biology students comparing their research on evidence of life on Earth and other planets. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Katrina.
Hey, Simon. Are you ready to compare notes for our presentation?
Yes, I think so. I found some really good sources describing how we find evidence of living things here and on other planets.
Me too.
So let's start with the study of fossils. That's the remains of prehistoric plants and animals now found in rock.
Right. Let's review the different fossil categories first. The different categories are based on how they're formed.
What about impression fossils? They're like a footprint. If you walk along the beach, you leave footprints in the sand which show what your feet look like. In the same way, these fossils give us a good idea of what ancient plants looked like.
Right, particularly the leaves. But they're completely inorganic, so they don't provide any cells for analysis.
We should probably include cast fossils. They're an interesting category.
Yes. I saw a cast of an ancient tree once in a museum and it was amazing.
Yes. What distinguishes them from two-dimensional fossils is that they're like a three-dimensional model of what the plant would have looked like.
Right. The plant tissue dies and leaves a hole which is filled by soft soil.
And that eventually hardens to make the cast, which retains the shape of the original.
Now, we definitely need to include permineralization fossils. They offer so much detailed information about ancient plants to scientists.
Yes, right down to a cellular level, which isn't possible with other fossils. Does this mean they were formed in special conditions?
No, quite common conditions, I think. They're formed when the plant is flooded with a fluid that's rich in minerals. This preserves them.
Okay. What about compaction fossils?
They're very common amongst plant fossils, but it's very rare to find an animal preserved in this way.
Oh, I didn't know that. I do know that they're usually found in swamps and other muddy areas.
We should probably include fusane fossils.
They weren't on my list. What are they?
They're the remains of a plant after it's been burned. They're often small and light, so they can drift in rivers or seas for quite long distances and provide evidence of life away from those areas where you tend to find the most fossils.
Ah, sounds like an interesting type of fossil.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So we've talked about how we find evidence of past life on Earth, and in the second part of our presentation, we want to demonstrate in a practical way how to find out if there has ever been life on other planets in the solar system.
Yes, and I thought we could present the information in the form of a flowchart.
Great idea. So, the procedure begins by sending a spacecraft to land on the planet.
Right. Then a vehicle, called a rover, is sent out from the spacecraft. This is a small machine which travels over the planet. The rover needs to find a good range of organic material, so they direct it to a site that's likely to provide this. Then the rover drills down under the surface to collect a sample.
Why does the sample have to come from underneath? Why not just scoop up some soil from the top? Is it to stop contamination from the rover? I've heard that can be a problem.
No, the rover is clean. It's actually because of the atmosphere. Unlike our planet, the surface might be exposed to high levels of radiation, and that could kill anything living on the surface.
I see. But something could still be present underneath the surface.
Yes, it's possible.
So at this point, the soil and rocks that have been collected would need to be analysed to see if there are any signs of fossils.
Right, just as we do on Earth. It's unlikely that there'd be anything that large, but it's an essential step.
Yes.
Once that's been done, the sample is crushed into a fine powder.
Why is that? Doesn't that destroy everything?
Well, luckily, no. And in the next stage of the analysis, the sample has to be exposed to heat, and then run through a mass spectrometer.
We'll need to explain that this is an instrument used to measure the weight and concentration of atoms and molecules.
Yes. This level of analysis is necessary to search for microscopic signs of life, much smaller than fossils, such as microbes.
So once all this has been done and the results sent back to Earth, what happens next? Can they do anything with the results?
Yes. They can compare them with data from similar studies done on large bodies of water or desert soils from Earth.
Fascinating. Let's make a start on our presentation slides, shall we?
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4. You will hear part of a talk about research into learner persistence given by a university lecturer to her colleagues. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
My talk is about a research study I did over a period of 5 years on learner persistence, why some people stick at academic study better than others. As teachers, you will know that there is a tremendous variation in the learner's response to certain things. For example, a short period of illness might completely destabilize some students and cause them to give up their degree studies. Other learners might overcome tremendous difficulties to stay the course. I am particularly interested in this second group, who are the ones with learner persistence. What I decided to do was design a research study using a sample of my university's third-year undergraduate students, 295 in all, who obviously had already stayed the course pretty well. The sample was drawn from a range of ages, but there was deliberately a significant number of mature students, and all respondents were living at home in the local region. I wanted to have this element of consistency, not having some coming from outside the area and living in university accommodation. It should be noted, though, that there was significant variation in home background to reflect the variation in our student population. I designed questionnaires which were devised to elicit what their concerns had been as they started the course, and what had sustained them throughout the 3 years. Findings from the first section indicated that their worries when they started varied from financial concerns, though this had not been as strong as I expected, to career prospects. But mature students with children tended to emphasize uncertainties about their relationship with them. The second section of my questionnaire looked at learner persistence under 3 main headings: social and environmental factors, other factors, and intrinsic or personal characteristics. I identified 3 levels of importance for each of these. At the first level, those points identified by participants as most important in learner persistence. For social factors, many respondents said how crucial it had been to have good support, though there was no one specific source. It could be family or friends. As regards other factors, students are heartened not so much by high grades, but by what they regard as success in study. And for personal characteristics, many respondents reported that they took pleasure in challenge and that this was regarded as very significant. At the second level of importance, in the first category, a sizable percentage talked about the fact that they had enjoyed themselves in school as an important social factor. In the second column, other factors, a number of people said that what was of most importance was decent health. This had a fairly strong influence on their persistence in their studies. And then, under the heading of personal characteristics, there were quite a large percentage of respondents who mentioned they felt it was important to have lots of interests in their everyday lives. This gave them a depth and sense of perspective, which less persistent learners might lack. And then on to the third level. Under social factors, several respondents talked about good relationships with their tutors. For other factors, they mentioned lack or absence of any problems in their families. And finally, under column 3, they identified an ability to juggle several roles, what we might call their capacity for multitasking. Now, these findings obviously helped inform the design of activities, as I mentioned. But in addition, a number of further recommendations emerged. Firstly, I propose that the department distributes questionnaires to first-year students to help get an idea of their maturity when starting the course. This is really our overriding concern. Secondly, I recommend we look into ways of offering induction courses for some selected students to allow them to take on the role of advisors. We think they are the best people to act in that role. This policy will make support much more accessible to our students. Thirdly, this help is often most needed in the evening and night when offices are closed, and so we should set up online services instead of the more traditional telephone services. Research has shown that these services are actually more accessible to the majority of students. And finally, it is often important to be proactive. If students are not meeting deadlines, then someone should contact them rather than wait for them to come to us. Now, are there any questions about the points?
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 45 seconds to check your answers to Part 4.
You now have 2 minutes to check all your answers.
Don't forget to comment, like, and share our video.